Once upon a time, there was a beautiful princess with long golden hair named Princess Anna. Her beauty was unmatched, and her name was known far and wide. In a neighboring kingdom, a young king heard countless stories about her charm and grace. Though he had never seen her, he fell deeply in love with her. His heart ached with longing, and he decided to send his ambassador to propose on his behalf. When the ambassador arrived at Princess Anna's palace, he delivered the king's heartfelt proposal. But the princess, though flattered, was not interested. She kindly but firmly declined the offer and sent the ambassador back. Upon hearing the news of her refusal, the young king was devastated. His heart was heavy with sorrow, and nothing seemed to console him. In the king's court, there was a young man named Charming. He was not only incredibly handsome, but also exceptionally talented. People admired his wit, bravery, and kindness. While most loved him, a few were jealous of his close friendship with the king. These jealous courtiers often sought ways to tarnish Charming's reputation. One day, as Charming overheard them discussing the princess's rejection, he said casually, "If the king had sent me to Princess Anna, I'm certain she would have come back with me." The jealous courtiers seized this opportunity to create trouble. They rushed to the king, exaggerating Charming's words. "Your Majesty," they said, "Charming claims he is more handsome than you, and that Princess Anna would have fallen for him instead." The king, already heartbroken, felt deeply insulted. Overcome with anger, he ordered Charming to be locked in a tall tower. Days passed, and Charming remained imprisoned, confused about why he was being punished. He often cried out, saying, "What have I done to deserve this? I have always been loyal to the king." One day, the king happened to pass by the tower and heard Charming's cries. He decided to confront him and opened the door. Charming immediately fell to his knees, pleading. "Your Majesty, what wrong have I done to face such cruelty?" the king replied. "You mocked me and my ambassador. You claimed that if you had gone to Princess Anna, she would have followed you instead." Charming explained, "Your Majesty, you misunderstood me. I only meant that I would have spoken so highly of you that the princess couldn't have refused. My words were never meant to offend you." Hearing this, the king realized his mistake and felt ashamed of his actions. To make amends, he asked Charming if he would still be willing to go to Princess Anna and propose on his behalf. Loyal as ever, Charming agreed without hesitation. The very next morning, Charming set out on his journey. As he traveled through forests and valleys, he encountered several creatures in need of help. By a stream, he saw a golden carp gasping for air, stranded on the grass. Gently, he picked up the fish and returned it to the water. The carp swam back to the shore and said, "Thank you for saving my life. One day, I will repay your kindness." The next day, Charming saw a raven being chased by a fierce eagle. Without a second thought, he drew his bow and shot the eagle down. The grateful raven perched on a branch and said, "You have saved me. I will not forget your kindness. One day, I will repay you." Later that night, as darkness fell, Charming heard an owl hooting in distress. Following the sound, he found the owl trapped in a hunter's net. Using his knife, he carefully freed the bird. The owl looked at him with gratitude and said, "You have saved me from death. I will always remember your kindness. One day, I will repay you." Finally, Charming arrived at the palace of Princess Anna. He dressed in his finest clothes and carried a small dog named Happy, which he had bought along the way. When the princess heard of his arrival, her curiosity was piqued. "Charming," she said. "The name itself promises much. I'm sure he's as handsome as people say." Her court ladies, who had seen Charming from the attic window, agreed enthusiastically. "He's the most handsome man we've ever seen," they exclaimed. The princess smiled and said, "Let's see if he lives up to his name. Bring me my finest blue dress and comb my hair. I want him to see me at my best." When Charming entered the throne room, he was momentarily stunned by the princess's beauty, but he quickly composed himself and delivered the king's proposal. The princess listened carefully and then said, "Charming, I appreciate your words, but I cannot accept the proposal yet. A month ago I lost a precious ring while walking by the river. It slipped from my finger and fell into the water. That ring is dearer to me than my kingdom. I swore that I would never marry unless it was returned to me." Charming was surprised by this condition, but he bowed deeply and promised to try. That night, he returned to his room feeling hopeless. "How can I possibly find a ring that has been lost in a river for a month?" he sighed. His loyal dog, Happy, lay beside him and said, "Master, do not lose hope. You have always been lucky. Let's go to the river tomorrow." The next morning, they went to the river. As Charming stood by the water, he heard a voice calling his name. It was the golden carp. "You saved my life," said the fish, "and now I can repay you. Here is the princess's ring." Charming gratefully took the ring and returned to the palace. When he presented the ring to Princess Anna, she was astonished. "I never thought it possible to retrieve this ring," she said. "But before I give you my answer, there is one more task. A giant named Gallifron wants to marry me, but I find him terrifying. If you want me to consider your king's proposal, you must defeat him and bring me his head." Princess Anna hoped to avoid marriage by giving Charming an impossible challenge. Surely, this task will stop him, she thought. But to her surprise, Charming confidently replied, "All right, Princess Anna, I will defeat the giant." The princess was shocked by his determination. She tried persuading him not to go, but Charming was resolute. Gathering his weapons and accompanied by his loyal companion, Happy, Charming, set out on the dangerous journey to the land of Gallifron. Along the way, they heard frightening stories about the giant, how he destroyed villages and crushed anyone who dared approach him. When Charming and Happy arrived at the giant's castle, it was an eerie sight. The castle was surrounded by broken trees and bones, a grim reminder of the giant's cruelty. Summoning his courage, Charming called out, "Come out, giant!" The ground shook as the giant stormed out, holding a massive club. With a roar, he charged at Charming, ready to strike. Just as the club was about to land, a raven swooped down and landed on the giant's head. The bird pecked fiercely, blinding the giant. Enraged and unable to see, the giant flailed wildly. Charming seized the moment, drawing his sword and delivering a swift blow, cutting off the giant's head. The raven perched on a tree and said, "I have repaid you for saving my life." Grateful for the raven's help, Charming returned to the kingdom, where he was welcomed as a hero. People cheered, "Charming has defeated the giant!" Presenting the giant's head to Anna, Charming said, "Princess, I've completed your task. Will you now accept my king's proposal?" Anna, however, gave him another impossible challenge. "You must bring me water from the cave of darkness," she said. "The cave is guarded by 2 fierce dragons, and the water is magical. It keeps beauty eternal and youth everlasting. I need it before I leave my kingdom." Though the task seemed impossible, Charming remained determined. "Princess," he said, "you are already the most beautiful person I've ever seen. But I will fulfill this task for my king." With Happy by his side, Charming traveled to the dangerous cave. The path was treacherous, with sharp rocks and steep cliffs. As they approached, the air grew thick with smoke. One of the dragons appeared, its fiery breath lighting up the dark sky. Charming turned to Happy and said, "If I don't return, tell the princess I gave my life trying to fulfill her wish." Suddenly, an owl called out from a tree, "Charming, you once saved my life, and now I'll repay you. Give me your bottle. I know the paths through the cave of darkness." Relieved, Charming handed over the bottle. The owl flew into the cave and returned shortly, the bottle filled with the magical water. Charming thanked the owl and quickly made his way back to the kingdom. When he presented the water to Anna, she was left speechless. "You've done the impossible," she said. Together they began the journey to the king's kingdom. During the trip, Anna laughed and said, "Why did we leave my kingdom? I could have made you king, and we'd be happy together." Charming replied, "I gave my word to the king, and I must honor it." The wedding was celebrated with grandeur, but Anna couldn't be happy without Charming by her side. The king's advisors noticed this and whispered to him, "The queen spends all her time with Charming. Shouldn't you be jealous?" Angered by their words, the king ordered Charming to be imprisoned in the tower. He was chained hand and foot with no hope of escape. Loyal Happy visited every day, bringing him food and news. When Anna learned of Charming's imprisonment, she begged the king to release him. Her pleas only made the king more furious. In his rage, he decided to use the magical water to enhance his appearance, hoping to win Anna's love. Unbeknownst to him, the bottle in the queen's room had been replaced with poison, meant for the kingdom's enemies. The king washed his face with the poison, fell asleep, and never woke up. Happy discovered the king's fate and rushed to tell Anna. Together, they freed Charming from the tower. Goldilocks placed a crown on his head and declared, "You are the rightful king, and I wish to marry you." Charming, overwhelmed with gratitude, accepted her proposal. Their wedding was the most beautiful the kingdom had ever seen. As king and queen, Charming and Anna ruled wisely and lived happily ever after.